welcome back again to Final Sector. That's right, we've had a small break in the F1 world, but we're back for round 3. And we are back at a circuit that, of course, is pretty cool for us because it's on our home country. Maybe a little bit more south for Michael than it is for myself, but we are back
Not
in
for long.
Melbourne.
Only for a couple more years.
Spoilers! I didn't know we were announcing that now. We're back in Melbourne. It's round 3. Round 3 for now, but in the future, we moved by the sounds of it, back to the start of the year, which would be
exciting.
Quite nice. It's going to make it even more popular. I think, this is obviously a race, we know a little bit more about it on the floor because, of course, we're here, and particularly we were there for all 4 days last year, and it was busy, and it's set to be even busier, easily record sellout, and they are finding more places to put people, and this is quite a big circuit. It's round, so there's a lot of space, so maybe some records might be hit this weekend.
I think it's pretty well certain that it's going to, and I think next year, if it's, I think they are going back to the
season opener, it will just be...
it's going to be even busier again. So
can you imagine if they also find a seat for Doohan? It'll just be
oh my god, yeah.
Buy your tickets now.
Yeah.
But yes, we are here to talk about the weekend. As we said, this is actually the first time for the season. The teams have had a little bit of a break between the back-to-backs, of course, and all the testing they have in Bahrain. So for certain teams coming in here, in particular, if you think about a team like Mercedes, this is a pretty big track to, I guess, take away your grievances and what you found didn't work from the first 2 rounds and kind of come here and make some changes. I guess, we'll properly see if they struggle again, bad omens. But if they can pick something up, hey, maybe it's not all bad, right? So it should be an interesting one.
Yeah, it's an interesting track. Like, I know as of sort of the last year or 2, they have made the changes for that big long back straight now instead of the sort of fiddly chicane in there, which I think has helped the racing. But it's still... This is still a track where it's really hard to overtake, and you have to be considerably faster than anyone else to be able to do it, or you just have to be really, really bold. So, and we saw some incredible moves through F1, F2, and F3 last year. Down that sort of back straight into the hairpin. There was some incredible moves. So it has opened up some racing, but qualifying is still super important for this. Like, you need to qualify ahead, like in probably the top 3 to even have a shot of winning this. So I would say that it's still sort of Red Bull, Ferrari, still 100% favorites here. But because it's not as reliant on having a super efficient car like it was in Saudi, because there's a little bit more of the slow speed stuff. It's not really reliant on top speed. You could have like McLaren come into it a little bit more. You could have Mercedes decide to, they obviously compensated by having the really skinny rear wing to have the drag. Exactly. They could go back to their more downforce centric car.
Yeah.
So it does bring these sort of, even Aston Martin potentially a little bit as well, it does bring these teams a little bit more back into it.
It's true.
So it could be a little bit closer, but I mean, we'll have to see. I don't really know what's going to happen here after the first 2 weekends. It's outside of Red Bull's going to be quick, as we know, but I don't really know outside of that.
Pretty easy to say that one. Yeah, and could be a weekend where an underdog team or 2, I think when we talk about underdog, we've kind of got these first 5 teams and the other 5. Could be a weekend here where if you have a driver who treats their tyres well or does a stint well or makes a critical pass or gets lucky with a safety car, it's not uncommon to see a few of those drivers score out here. And I think the Williams here looked pretty good. Yeah. And of course it was unlucky with Albon crashing out. So in that case, it could be a stand to see what he can do, and maybe a good weekend to see for Sargent as well. If that car is strong, I guess we can probably see, hey, you're now, into your second year, you've had a few races. This could be a race where maybe he shines and picks things up. You never know, right? But it's normally not that bad. I think the changes, they overall make the track a bit simpler, but I think it does work in its favor because the other layout just didn't work with these cars. No straights were long enough. No braking zones were hard or wide enough. But here, as we've seen, you can almost use a bit of that skill or different ways of, trying to overtake, trying to pass, to do things here.
Yeah.
And for a track for qualifying, I think it's actually quite interesting now because it's so fast, because so many of those corners are wide. If you've got confidence, you really can toss a car in, but you've got an unstable car, you could have a big accident here. As we saw kind of last year, with quite a few things going on. I think there's just a few minor notes. So, for example, I saw that they're actually starting the race a little earlier this year. They moved it forward by 2 hours. Off the feedback from the drivers that normally here they try to do it in the evening because it means it's a morning EU race, but the sun here is absolutely blinding, and I think it affected the drivers so bad where they said, right, let's move it forward 2 hours to try and dodge that.
It was really I remember when we were there last year, and it was in sort of the last phases of the race in the summer setting. It was really beautiful, but I can imagine
you're looking down the track,
like there's no way they can see anything ahead of them.
Yeah. So a logical change, and I mean, I guess it's a positive change to see, because they could have just told the drivers, well, suck it up, and this does kind of make it even worse for Europe. There's a reason they tried to make this a twilight race in the first time, or a night race. But good, they took it to heart, and they just said, no, look, we understand, we've tried it for a few years. If the race does lead on like last year, some of the drivers even attributed some of that chaos to say some of them just couldn't bloody see, and that was a distraction, right? So a logical step, I think. And this is actually the first time that we have 2 Australians on the grid in more than 10 years as well.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we didn't have that direct overlap with Ricciardo, at least on the track last year. So, of course, that's generating a fair bit of excitement here. I think it actually is a pretty big weekend for Ricciardo.
He needs to show something.
Yeah, and of course, in the general media, he's saying, look, I figured it out, I'm refreshed, I've had the break. But it's like, okay, then points? If not, okay, well, I mean, a lot of big talk here.
I've heard very similar comments before from other drivers, say, like a Sergio Perez or a Valtteri Bottas when he was at Mercedes. And they didn't. So it's like, words are cheap. He needs to, start showing some action pretty soon.
Yep.
I think, and I know that RB is not as maybe quite as good as anyone really expected it to be.
It's hard to know.
Season.
It could just be a car that here might actually be really good.
Maybe,
This track is like it is fairly different to the other two in a way, because Saudi has the very fast corners, but they're heavy load. This track has low load, and it's really about like the corner apex, or like single kind of turns, rather than like load in a way over the whole car. So you don't really need downforce. You need a car that's almost a bit like kind of like pointy in a way, not slippy. So we could see something different. And I guess we hope to see something different. It'd be nice to see things maybe mixed up a little bit. I don't think at this stage Ferrari have made a statement on Sainz. Of course, Sainz was seen in the paddock during Saudi, but they have brought Ollie on site. I mean, Ollie is in the F2, but I think they've said in the background they are preparing for him in the Case Hill race, so that probably means they've been giving him some extensive training, probably some extra sim work above what he would normally do.
From what I've heard, I think the general consensus is that Sainz will race this weekend.
Agree. Yeah, so, that's what I've seen too. Yeah. But again, that means that I guess he is back in form for F2. Sort of interesting to see him, to see if he can continue to shine there. And Australia, even for F2, was normally, I know last year it was pretty damn spicy. A lot of drivers have mainly been struggling. Yeah, for sure.
Very good. Yeah.
F3 was a bit of a crash fest last year. I think a lot of people really struggled here.
Yeah, I think we saw like in F2 and F3 were the first ones where we saw a couple of moves into the 10-11. I think it's 10-11 chicane.
The back straight. Yeah.
Like at the end of the back straight, but you saw like F2 and F3 guys going like 3 wide into that chicane and coming out unscathed, and it's like some awesome moves into there. So I'm expecting a bit more of that. It'll be good. It's gonna be a good watch, I think.
Yep. I think they've made a few other smaller changes. I think the details after they had a bit of the track invasion, which we talked about last year. It seems they're taking away that ability. The iconic seeing the crowds run onto the track. from what I hear, I guess the FIA has decided, look, it's nice if you and security have this under control, but you didn't last year, and we're not risking this because this could be catastrophic.
Yeah.
With a bunch of drunk bogans on the track. So.
It's a shame, yeah. Like, if, for people that don't know, there was people that were let onto the track on the cool-down lap. So it was like, as the checkered flag waved, they obviously still have to do one more lap, but they were let onto the track as cars were still going past. Which is obviously incredibly dangerous. And then people fucking climbing the things to jump over because obviously they weren't let through. They were seeing other people on the circuits. They just decided to climb the barriers to jump onto the track. And it's like, yeah, you can't do that. So, and I think, as I said to you, we might be some of the last people to ever walk the track at the end of a race because we did it last year. So, and
we walked a lot of it. We walked until the gates were basically closed.
Yeah, they were basically.
It was amazing how quick it just dissipated.
Yeah,
but we did. So. You could say yes, we were the last ones to walk the track that much.
Yeah,
so that's something.
That's yep. We got footage. We got footage for it as well.
Did.
So maybe we'll release that one day.
Oh yeah,
one day.
That's what I was going to make something on it, but you beat me to the joke. So I myself will be there on the Saturday actually, so that should be quite exciting. I'll be sure to give my post-weekend review from on the floor.
Hell yeah.
A side note here, which I was reading about, more local news, but hey, that's what we're here for. That's what we're going to cover. There was some gremlins, I think, from the V8 Supercars paddock. If you've seen,
very vaguely saw something about that. Yeah, okay.
If you've seen Albert Park, it has quite a long pit road. So much so that in the past they have all the F1 garages plus a few spare, and then a whole set of another garages, and they're just to the right in the F1. If you imagine they're pulling to the pits, it's basically to the right during that stretch before they have to slow down.
Yeah.
And for as long as I can remember, the V8s have always operated out of there. However, they've moved them out and they've put the F2 in. And I think it's made a bit of a statement to the V8s to almost go, this is, the new second big thing here rather than the V8s. And they even have their own paddock in the middle of the track now. So I think there was a few gremlins from a few drivers going, this is Australia. We should be showing Australia here. And yet, F2's getting treatment. They don't get to do their pit stops now. So I understand it's caused a bit of conversation, but it's a big statement to pull F2 and F3 over here. I mean, it was a few years ago they were talking about making it cheaper for the junior teams and cheaper for the junior drivers. And yet they all operate in Europe and they're bringing them to Australia. So I guess because of that, they are kind of going out of their way to give them the El Primo treatment in a way.
Suppose so, yeah.
Yeah. So just some side conversation, but it's still interesting. But it is a jam-packed weekend. They have a lot on here, which is good. Generally keeps the rubber in track. I haven't checked. I know the weather here has been pretty toasty after last year where we had some rain.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't even check the weather. It's the first weekend where weather even really comes into it.
It looks like it should be dry, but it might be cool, actually. Cool conditions.
Interesting. So, okay, that could make for some interesting qualifying runs.
Yeah, it looks like it won't be wet, but it'll be pretty chilly and maybe a little windy. So that sounds like
windy will be
good
interesting.
Conditions. Yeah,
windy is very interesting at this track. So
indeed, indeed. I guess if we're all good there, then we can go on to predictions. That area that used to be really fun and now feels like do we need to predict like P4 to 6 or something to actually introduce some variety?
Yeah, maybe we just hold out hope that it starts to get a bit more
I thought you were going to say we just hold off predicting. It's like we're not going to continue this until...
Just kick it. Yeah.
We're going to change and we're going to do F2 predictions only.
We could, man. Man, that'd be so much more interesting.
I know.
God.
But yeah, so we do need to recap. I went with the alternate strategy, let's call it, compared to what you did, and yours was just correct.
Yep. Prime strategy works again.
Yes, the Max winning, the Checo P2, and the Charles P3. So you get the 3 for that, and the bonus for getting all of them right. So you're on a lovely 6 points already.
Do we get a bonus for getting them all right? I don't think we ever did that.
I thought about it, and I thought I'm going to put a note down to see a bonus
fair
for
enough.
getting them right.
There's going to be a lot of bonus points, I think, this season.
I'm taking control this time. I'm doing the math. I'm going to be right. You want to do it, right? You take over
no,
this.
no. You got this. You got this. I believe in you.
So you're on a lovely 6.
Yeah, wow. After 2 weekends.
And I got the 1 for Max and then half for the other 2. So that means I'm on I've already done my math wrong. I got 2, so I'm on 2.5.
Oh,
no,
wow.
3.5.
3.5, yeah, because you got 1 for Mac. Yep. 3.5.
We did not get our guess for P13.
No.
You went with Albon. I
was
went
11.
for Zhao, and it was an Alpine.
It was Ocon, yeah.
It was Ocon.
Because Gasly didn't
I feel like
finish.
Zhao might have been close if he didn't have a 57-second pit stop, so I feel cheated.
True.
I'm gonna say.
I forgot about that. I did forget about that.
I went the results. I'm like, why is he down there? He was with Hulk.
Yep.
Oh, because his wheel nut got stuck again.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Can that team fix their pit stops? 2 weekends in a row, they've had a.
It's been pretty bad, eh? Yeah.
So
couple that with the fact
anyway.
that they're not very strong in general is kind of worrying. But we'll see.
But we do need to get our random number. It's surely not going to be 16 again, like
15.
it was 2 weeks in a row.
It was 15,
was
I
it 15
think. Yeah.
15? It is 17. Well, I guess this is a question. I mean, there hasn't been that many retirements. If you see, this is maybe a track that
I was about to say last year there was a lot of retirements. So.
maybe a bit of an oversight. But not oversight, you know what I mean?
I have a feeling it might just be. I'm just going to say Bottas. They don't qualify well, and then they get stuck behind everyone, and they can't seem to pass the Salvers.
And you feel like, because even like you
Yeah.
think about a Haas, but then if their
Haas
strengths were like the straights and the simpler corners, they should be okay here.
And they qualify well, and
Yeah,
then
it
they
might
can
just
hold
be
up
that the
another
Alpine-
train, and it's...
The Alpine might just suck at anything that's not an easier circuit, which this one
Yeah.
is. Like, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's so unlikely to hit it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
It could just
I'm
be
not
a
going for this guy.
could
He's
just
gonna
be a
do better than
retirement. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
he will.
that. A retirement.
It could be. That's what 4
I'll
retirements.
still just put like a Gasly there. Stuff.
Gasly. That was the other consideration I had. Yeah.
Do we need to actually go over the top 3? Do you have an idea that? I guess it's.
I have
guess
something
the questions. Okay. So the questions I guess to ask, which you're going to answer, is Checo strong enough to get a P2 here, and is the Ferrari or one of the Ferrari drivers strong enough to be the other one on the podium? I suppose is the questions to ask you. Now I'm going to go out with it. I'm just going with the safe pick now because
you're going the
don't
safe.
have
Okay.
a case
yeah.
for anything else.
Fair.
I mean, I tried 2 weeks in a row to do the different. I mean,
Yep.
the first week I got it right, but then it stuffed me, and then I went back, and then you picked it, so whatever. I'm going the safe one now, but I'm glad that you've got
Yep.
something.
No, I mean, obviously I got Max P1. I'm not going to change that. I have still got Charles P2.
Okay.
I guess I say I've got Charles P2, but I've got him now P2 instead of P3.
Yeah, I was going to say
think,
that is the change, right?
that is, yeah. So I think he's normally pretty strong here. And I just think that Ferrari will be a little bit closer this weekend, particularly in qualifying. And I think if he can, I mean, he was P2 in Saudi as well for qualifying, and I think the Red Bull strengths, from what I can see so far, I think their strengths were considerably greater in somewhere like Saudi than they will be than somewhere like here in Australia. So I think Leclerc has a real shot at getting P2 and keeping it. But I've also not got Checo P3. So
Ooh, good on ya.
Maybe it's a little bit of bias. Maybe it's just because I want to see him do well. But I've got Piastri getting P3. So
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good pick.
yeah. Again, I think that McLaren could be strong here. Like I saw,
Yeah.
you see how fucking incredible they were in the like sort of medium speed flowy stuff in that.
true.
Like
It's
they
true.
they sacrificed to the straights, but yeah, in that middle speed stuff, they're just so good, and I feel like
Yeah.
they could be really good here. And
a
I'm
good
just
shout.
I'm kind of just backing Piastri to lift a bit, being, you know,
I mean,
home
an
circuit,
overall
all that,
weekend,
so-
he had the better weekend last week. So
Yeah.
I think even if argument, I guess you could say, well, Norris was on a different strategy, but I mean, Piastri
outqualified
started
him as
ahead of
well.
him, and his overall pace was matching, if not better. So I don't have any qualms with that. I think that's a great guess.
Yep. So
I hope so. I hope
indeed.
there's a bit more of a fight for that immediate gap behind the Red Bull, especially if it's for one of the other Red Bull drivers as well that's kind of in that fight.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I haven't got Checo there is because I think if qualifying is going to be a little bit closer, I rate Leclerc, and a couple of tenths is all it takes for him to be shuffled down a few places, and if it is that hard to overtake, and the car isn't like 700 kilometers an hour faster, it's not as easy to overtake here as it is like Saudi. So.
It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I could easily see him not being on the podium this weekend. So, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good.
Something different.
But yes, all of you out there, Aussies and not Aussies, do make sure, of course, to tune into this weekend as always. As a reminder, this is back to the usual schedule, so make sure you realign yourself for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
Again, it could be a little different because now it's on another part of the world, so it may be slightly adjusted for you. But make sure to check your calendars and all that good stuff just to make sure. But there's one thing for certain, which is that we will be back afterwards to debrief it all, and maybe a bit of an extended session, because we like to talk about Australia a bit more and we follow it very closely.
Yeah. And we'll talk about F2 and
forward to
F3
that.
as well. So now that we're doing that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep, all good. We may talk about Vershaw for sure. For all you know.
Yeah. That's...
I wanted to make that joke for like 2 years and I never bothered. I'm like, I'm doing it now.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna cut it. I hope you know that.
We're gonna cut this episode anyway.
It's done.
Look forward to the weekend. We'll be back afterwards. And otherwise, take care, enjoy yourselves, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye bye.